Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel.
Okay, so got that. Let's test something. Okay, those seem really smooth. Great. I'm not going to worry about that unless there's an issue. Okay, what I was doing was checking how smoothly these kingpins rotated in these holes here, and if the holes needed to be reamed out a little bit to make them larger. We're going to be using a grub screw on all four of these to lock this pin in position. So the pin is not going to rotate in here. It rotates here and here. In fact, I might as well start those grub screws now while they're off the vehicle. Let's see, which size do we need? The mediums. Okay. And the same is true of the rear. So we're going to slide our drive shaft in. As we put that in place, we're going to slide in a kingpin. Make sure it is centered through on both sides. And tighten the grub screw down till it makes contact on the kingpin. And there we have our front suspension on one side. Do the remaining ball stud and the caster rods in a minute. So, camber links, excuse me. These can be a little tricky to get into that hole there. There we go. In a minute. That one's a little bit longer. We must have two different lengths here. Yep, there's a slightly longer ones that go in the rear. So I'm just going to slide the other one through here and push it out. Okay, done. Onto the rear. You know what, before I put these in to keep these things from moving around on me, I'm going to go ahead and put in the ball studs there. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, we need our inboard links, and there are 2 holes in the bulkhead. We are supposed to go for the ones that are furthest away from the axle, so towards the rear and the front, towards the front and the rear. In front we use a 2mm spacer, and in the rear we use a 1mm spacer. Okay, so now we can go ahead and now these have two different sides to them. It's more obvious on this one than the other one. You see how this one's a little more closed, and then this one has a bit of an open edge to it. That's the side that we want pointing down. Can't get in there with a pair of pliers. Right now that's a little long. There we go. And I've got it backwards. I want the hatch pointing inboard. Make sure that your axles are in the out drives, or you'll have to take these back off again. These I can reach. There we go. Much better. Seems I nicked myself a little bit. Rarely does a model go together without something giving you a bite. Okay, make sure that kingpin is equal on both sides. And we'll tighten in our grub screw until it tightens down on the kingpin. Bingo. Get our axle into our out drive. Snap on our camber link. There we go. So now, just for kicks, as you can see, the rear drive shafts are pointing down, one more than the other. I'm going to go ahead and just adjust my turnbuckles front and rear till things are pointing about horizontally. That's close enough for right. Well, I'm going to give it a little more. I'm going to want some negative camber back there anyway, probably. See, this is so much easier when you know which direction to go. That's pretty good. Oh, my axle is not in place over here. Okay. That should be good enough for eyeballing it. Okay, we are all done with that page. Now we need our steering links. We need a pair of 8mm ball studs. which I got right here. And there are, let's see, do we need a spacer? Asphalt, 2mm shim, carpet, none. So asphalt, okay. No problem. I'm going to go ahead and use aluminum instead of plastic. And we need the outermost is our initial setting. You know, that's interesting. While I was screwing those in, I kind of was reading over this. The number of shims changes the angle of the steering linkage. Of course, that, you know, is obvious what it does. When no shims are used, the car is easy to drive into the corner. As the number of shims increases, in-corner steering increases, but the car becomes more difficult to drive. Do I really want more difficult to drive as my initial setting? I'm thinking about swapping that for a 1mm spacer and giving it a drive, even though that is recommended for asphalt. I'm going to go with the recommendation. I'll go with their recommended 2mm, but I will, of course, have that whole box of spacers with me at the track. So if I have any kind of issue with turn-in, the first thing I'm going to do is go to a 1mm spacer and then possibly to none. So that's how I think I'll handle this. Hey, I did a really good job on those steering turnbuckles without even trying. I didn't measure them or anything, and I've got pretty straight steering here. Okay. So one of the things you'll learn when you're doing cars, and I've shown this in other videos, once the steering is in here and it's time to start tuning the front suspension, the first thing you want to do is set your radio up so that your servo is pointing perfectly straight up and down, okay? Adjusting the center point. Now, once you've got that done, then you want to adjust the length of this linkage here between the servo and the rack, and adjust that until the servo is still pointing straight up and down and the rack is perfectly square. Both arms are pointed equally forward, okay? Once those are adjusted, then you adjust each wheel to have the correct amount of toe in or toe out that you want, while again making sure the rack doesn't move. So that's the order in which you adjust things. Because if you adjust, like you start adjusting, you know, your toe out here and you've got it towed out properly, but you've got your angle off here, then you're going to get more steering to one side than the other. Your range of motion is going to be different. You'll have more left and right or vice versa. Then you're going to have to go back to square one, start by making this adjustment, and then doing the other two. And of course, if the servo isn't adjusted to straight up and down, you'll also get more left than right or more right than left, depending on which side it's over to. You're going to get, you know, less or more transition. And ideally, you want to adjust the spacer and the number of spacers down there so that this linkage is horizontal. You don't want it like at an angle between the servo and you know, the arm. Otherwise, you're going to get issues also. But that's ideal. You can't always get that, but that's what you want to shoot for. So let's see. Okay, we've got our spacers in, our steering is hooked up, so now we are into sway bar time. And let me just confirm which size sway bars I'm going to be using here for my initial setup. I am using their sheet for asphalt, along with some recommendations by their drivers from their tuning videos. So let's see. Roll bars. So they recommend the 1.4 front, 1.3 rear, additive timing, 10 minutes. I do not understand what that's for, but I will find out. And that they are running the stock setup, so that's easy enough. You just I don't know if I've shown this to you guys already, but I'll show you again. This is the setup sheet that I am filling in as I go, and so in this case I'm going to be putting in let's see, what was that, 1.3 rear, 1.4 front, yes, 1.3, 1.4, and these little clipboards, I got these on Amazon. They're really nice for the track. You've got a little cubby here for a couple of pens. I keep a red and a blue. And inside it, I keep extra blank setup sheets. I keep the directions and any little cheat sheets, like this is the Team Losi spring sheet. I basically downloaded these videos, these images, and printed them. This is all their different springs, their sizes and weights. These are different manuals, so that I've got, if I have the car with me, I got the manuals. Usually I'll remove any manuals that I don't need that day. These are just, again, some little cheat sheets of mine. This is like, okay, not enough grip, the front steer's pushing, got understeer, things to try. Back end sliding loose, oversteer, things to try. Rear end hopping in corners, things to try. Just quick diagnosis, camber settings, and track conditions. Just a little Word document I threw together a while back. Here we have my Losi 22 DC and all of the extra sheets and whatnot. This is a go-kart tuning manual, so it gives you an idea how far back some of this paperwork goes. Actually, this is helpful because go-karts are really tricky to learn to tune, and one of the main things you can do is move the front wheels further out and the rear or closer in, and likewise for the rear, changing the track, and that can have a dramatic change in handling. And that's something you can do very easily with radio control cars by just adding a few washers or different hexes, front and rear. So these clipboards are about $14. So this is our 1.3. You can see it has 3 little laser etchings on it, and this is our 1.4. It has 4 laser etchings on it. So this is our front, this is our rear. They're also slightly different shaped, so it's important to know which is which. And I did get myself a few extras of these in different sizes, so I can play with that. Because for asphalt, I might want to go like with softer springs to get more suspension reaction to let the car move up and down more quickly, but then control that as far as lean with a slightly stiffer roll bar. So that's one way of tuning a car on asphalt to try to make it a little more handleable. But there's a lot of options. So let's go ahead here, and okay, we've got these different eyelets. These have a hole for a grub screw. Those are going to anchor onto the ends of our sway bars, and then we have our 4mm ball studs, and those are going to thread into another eyelet, which is going to probably snap right onto these little plastic ball ends that are molded into our front and rear A-arms. So we'll start by prepping those pieces. There's a pair of those, and here are the 4 of these. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to trim all these little suckers out. I'll put them all together except one, and then I'll demo the process for you. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take 4 of these 4mm grub screws, and you're going to put 1 each into these eyelets here, and those are to anchor in the sway bar. So the sway bar will go in like that, and it'll get tightened down and clamp it in place. You're going to take the 4 of the 4mm ball studs, screw one into each of these eyelets. Then we can take these, and we're going to want the you want the grub screw facing up so that you can get to it. I'm just confirming that that's the way they do it. Yep, that's the way I would do it. So we're going to go ahead and snap one of those into each like that so that we have this linkage. Okay. So now we want to take 2 of these, and we might as well do this now. They show it done while it's on the car. I think it's easier doing these off the car and then putting them on. Take one of these little 2.5mm grub screws. Get a little bit of Loctite on there, and then screw it into the hole in the side here, like that, and just get it started. Now, let me just see if they give us a left and a right here, or vice versa. Okay, those are the same, and those are the same. So they're all cut in the same place. Okay, no left or right. So what these do is you slide them over here, and that's why there's that slot cut in here, so you can get them past these bends. So you'll put it to the bottom, and then it slides right over the bend. And they face with the narrow end going out to either side. Okay, and now that we've got those on, we can go ahead and put our end pieces on. Again, face them upwards, or at least point them in the same direction so that you are basically establishing the up position. Put it all the way to the bottom. And don't over tighten it, just get it so it's locked in place. Okay. So now we can, let me just confirm that these go over or under, they go under the drive shafts. So just kind of work them in on either side. Yeah, it might actually be easier to have one. I was able to get one through, but yeah, I may need to disconnect them, or take one of them off at least. Okay, so oh, there's bearings, that's right. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the bearings. It is easier to have these off after all. Okay, let's just start that part fresh. What size? We're going to need those small bearings. So the bearings go over the ends of these pieces, just like that. Then you can slide them into place. And these round cutouts here on our bulkhead. Well, it looks like they go from the outside. Okay, my mistake. Most of the ones I've seen go from the inside, but okay. So I got to take the bearing off. Take that off. Okay, so we are going to take one of these, get that over there, get the bearing on it like that. We're going to get another bearing over here, and we're going to get this piece over the bend so they are facing each other like that. Then we can lay this in there and slide those two pieces in. So now what we want to do is, well, we've got to have the bar needs to be under the drive shafts. So I need to take this back out for just a second. Okay. Put those underneath the drive shafts, over the A-arms. Slide our bearing in there. Slide one in there. And now we want to make sure that our sway bar is centered. And you can have the screws pointing forward or up, as is your pleasure. Doesn't really matter, as long as you can get to them. Up is probably a little easier. Okay, so now our sway bar is free to move smoothly without it being able to have any lateral or up and down movements. So now we need to, we can kind of slide those onto the end of the sway bar, and then we want to snap these on here. And that's probably most easily done with a pair of pliers. Like that. Go ahead and do the other one. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to do this and have it where you can see it with the camera. Okay, now we can plug those into the sway bar. Or make sure it's all the way, the sway bar is all the way into the eyelet. Okay, so now if we lift up on one side, the other side starts pulling up, which is exactly what we want from a sway bar. And there's just clearance under the axle for the sway bar. Those are really close. But close doesn't make contact, so that's fine. So now that you've seen one, I'm going to go ahead and do the other one off screen. It's exactly the same. So the rear sway bar is on. Again, we have perfect movement. Everything is just really smooth. Love this kit. Clearances is just right there, like a millimeter, maybe 1.5 millimeters off the drive shaft. Perfect. Absolutely love it. So we are all done there. Everything is centered. Everything is done exactly the way they say it should be. Sway bars are all done. Now we have an optional setting for the rear sway bar linkage. Or excuse me, the rear. There's two ball studs molded in back here. One here, here. So we could potentially attach to either of the two linkages. I went for the outer one. It seemed most in line with the ends of the sway bar. Let's see, initial position is outer, and use the outer ball on medium-high traction tracks. The car will roll less, which will make it easier to drive with more cornering speed. Use the inner ball on low traction tracks, mainly low traction carpet tracks. The car will have more traction and more steering, but will be more difficult to drive because the car will roll more. Now, in theory, you could do the same thing just by changing the sway bar to a thinner sway bar, or excuse me, a stiffer sway bar in that case, because you're giving the sway bar, no. This would be like putting on a thinner sway bar because you're giving the sway bar less leverage because it's closer to the fulcrum. In other words, it's closer to the pivot point of the A-arm. The closer this link is, the more force the arm exerts against it. So the further it is out, the more the sway bar can have effect on it because it's at the further end of the levering arm, as it were. So that might be something to try before switching to a lighter sway bar to see if you're getting the right effect, if the effect is going in the right direction. If you flip this over to here and the car seems to drive a little better, but not quite, but there is some improvement, try putting it back here, but going to, say, a 1.2 millimeter or a 1.1 and seeing how that impacts the way the car handles. So just things to consider.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel. If you click the bell icon, you'll receive notifications every time I launch a new video. Thank you for watching.